Hi, I'm Darrin Peppard. Welcome to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, the podcast dedicated to today's hardworking leader. Join me every Sunday for leadership insight, inspiration, and a little pep talk to keep you rolling down your road to awesome. Welcome in, friends, to episode number 74 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast. My guest on the show today is Dr. Lute Croy. Now, Lute is finishing up his 20th year in public education. During that time, he's been a teacher, a coach, an instructional coach, and he's been an administrator. He currently is an assistant principal at Prosper High School in Prosper, Texas, where he serves a student body of, get this, folks, 3,800 students. What a huge high school. My high school where I was principal was 1,400 kids. That's not even one level at this school. Holy cow. Big high school that Dr. Lute Croy is a part of the leadership team at. But that's not all. Dr. Croy is so passionate about developing new and aspiring school administrators that he and a longtime friend of his and a very talented school leader himself, Brett Phipps, decided to create a company called the New School Leader. And the mission at New School Leader is to help new and aspiring administrators take that next step in their leadership journey, whatever it might be. Lute and I sat down and had a really great conversation, and it ties in so perfectly with the month of May and our focus on aspiring, new, and rising leaders. You're going to hear this incredible conversation that I had with Lute right on the other side of this message from our sponsor, Peer Driven PD. Hey leaders, teachers and administrators don't always see eye to eye, so it might surprise you that over 86% of teachers and administrators agree that we need more full-time classroom teachers leading our professional development. That's where my friends at Peer Driven PD come in. Peer Driven PD finds some of the best teachers in the country and documents their instructional strategies that work in real classrooms every day. And then they make the content available to schools everywhere. It's kind of like a master class, but for teachers. Imagine that. Your teachers are learning from other amazing teachers who, just like them, are gifted and passionate about driving student achievement. And if you've got your own superstar teachers who deserve some exposure, Peer Driven PD will visit your campus and film your own teachers doing what they do best and share it on the platform for their colleagues and everyone else to see. What a huge morale boost that can be for a district. And just so you know, Mike Alpert, who's the company's founder, has been a guest on this very podcast. Check out episode 49. Mike's a former teacher and administrator who has worked with schools from coast to coast. He really understands the need for engaging PD that teachers will appreciate. Look, I've seen this work firsthand. It's unique, it's interesting, and it's just what you need if your teachers want more out of their professional development. Visit peerdrivenpd.com to request a quote. Tell them the Leaning into Leadership podcast sent you, and they'll give you a free trial access so you can check out all of their content and decide for yourself. As well, they'll give you an additional 10% off your first year's subscription simply for mentioning the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Go to peerdrivenpd.com today. Again, that's peerdrivenpd.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get on to the episode.
All right, Lute, welcome into the Leaning into Leadership podcast, my friend. Really quick, give my audience a quick, here's who Dr. Lute Croy is.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in my 20th year in education. I am currently an assistant principal in Prosper, Texas. I had no intention of setting out to be an administrator when I got into education 20 years ago. I was a teacher and a coach, and I was going to change the world through coaching high school football here in Texas, and loved every second of it. Moved around. My wife and I moved quite a few times, and my kind of second to last coaching stop, I ran into some really phenomenal administrators while I was working on my master's degree, and they kind of showed me how impactful really good administrators could be. And that was the first time when my eyes were kind of open to, hey, there's this other world that I could be a part of and where I could make a difference. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt kind of pulled in that direction. And ultimately we decided to make the switch. We realized that we could multiply our influence through the adults in the building. And instead of working with the 150 to 200 kids a day that I got to work with as a teacher, now I get to work with, 40 teachers who each get to work with that many kids a day. And, so we're trying to multiply our leadership a little bit through some other adults. And, it's been great. And, like you said, I finished my dissertation in August, defended that. And so now they call me doctor. I don't know. I tell everybody, I joke around. I grew up in Oklahoma. I joke around that I'm the same dumb redneck I was in July, 2 weeks before I defended my dissertation, but they gave it to me anyways. And so I'm really excited about that. And, I know we'll get into what my research was all about, but that's kind of what led me into what I'm doing right now with the new school leader and with coaching and things like that, where we're working with new and aspiring administrators, trying to help them take the next step in their journey, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I know that's the thing that really, I think connected us or certainly drew me toward wanting to have a conversation with you, was this work around new school leader. And yeah, we're definitely going to get into that in just a couple of minutes. So let's talk a little bit more about though that journey, that transition from being a classroom teacher, being a coach. Obviously a journey that I followed as well. I wasn't a head football coach; I was a head basketball coach, but still very similar. And you want to make that impact on kids through coaching, through the work that you do in your classroom. And then it's interesting. A lot of people, if they haven't done that work, if they haven't made that leap into administration and actually stuck their foot in the water as an assistant principal, I mean, the true middle management job in education, I mean, it really, truly is. They don't necessarily see or understand how, in your words, you multiply your influence in those spaces. And I want to come to that in a minute, but let's just start first with when you made that first jump out of the classroom into administration. What was like the biggest eye opener for you? What were those things that you're like, really? Wow, I didn't see that coming, positive or negative. I mean, whatever it was.
Sure. I think there are a few things, and honestly, I think the more I talk to administrators, I see the same pattern over and over again. And unfortunately, a lot of those realizations are negative, and it's not bad. It's just there are a lot of those things like, gosh, I had no idea. Right. So
yeah,
I like to tell the story. The night before I started my first day on the job as an assistant principal, right? So we come back in July, there's no kids, there's no teachers. It's just our administrative team. And I was so excited because I had worked hard to get the job. I had talked to a lot of people. I had prepped for interviews and I had done everything I could. I felt like to position myself to get an AP job, and I finally got it. And so I was super fired up. But the night before I sat down, or the night before I tried to go to bed, to start my new job the next day, I didn't sleep 1 minute that whole night. And it wasn't because of the butterflies. It wasn't because I was nervous. It wasn't because I was full of anticipation. It was because I laid there in bed all night long thinking, what in the world am I supposed to do when I get into the office tomorrow? And it was just that moment of realizing I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Like I had done all the prep, right? I'm certified in a couple of different states. I've got my master's degree and all of that, but I'm still laying there in bed going, I'm going to show up tomorrow. I'm going to walk in the front door and I'm going to go to my office. I knew where it was and I already had it decorated, even though I hadn't started yet. And I was like, cool, I got my pictures. I got everything where it's supposed to go. What do I do when I sit down in the chair? And thankfully I showed up and my principal sat down with us and talked through all of our responsibilities. We spent the whole day just talking through responsibilities. And once I got through that day, I had a much better idea, at least of, okay, this is what I'm responsible for. I still don't know how to do any of it, but I'm responsible for it. And so that was probably the biggest realization to me in all of that, was that there's really, I don't want to say there's not a way to prepare. I want to say we don't do a very good job of preparing aspiring administrators to step into the role. Because I hear that same story over and over and over again that, man, I got into this and I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I think that's the first one. I think the second realization is not everybody does things the same way that you do, or with the same level of concern, or with the same level of intensity or intentionality. Yeah. And I think I hear that a lot, and it's not necessarily just in an administrative role. I also hear that it's really anybody who's stepping out of the classroom the first time, whether that's moving into a curriculum role or moving into an administrative role. The first time they step into other people's classrooms and have to work with adults, all of a sudden they realize, like, oh, this might not mean as much to them as it means to me, or, oh, there are other ways to do it. It might not be the way I would do it, but I've got to learn how to encourage the work, and let them have some ownership and some autonomy. Even though I might not feel like it's the best way to do it, it's still helping kids and it's different. So that was another big piece there. And the other piece, and you may be able to relate to this one, Darrin, when I was a coach, I went to bed every night feeling like, man, I did something great today. Like I could point to a kid, I could point to another coach, I could point to somebody and go, I did something today that impacted a kid individually, right? And I could go to bed every night feeling almost like a hero, right? Because coaches are my heroes, so maybe that's where that comes from. But I went to bed every night feeling like a hero, feeling like I did something worthwhile, feeling like I'm making a difference, right? There are a lot of nights, especially that first year being an administrator, when you go home and first of all, your spouse will say, "Hey, what'd you do today?" And you go, "I have no idea, but I'm exhausted."
Yeah.
And
didn't I just leave the house 4 minutes ago? I mean, that's what it feels like, right? Yeah.
So with that, you get home and you're exhausted, you're tired, and you've done things all day. There's no idle time in the assistant principal seat or the principal seat for that matter. But you'll get home and realize, I have no idea what I did today. And it's that, like, when you don't know what you did all day, it's really hard to feel like you did something worthwhile. You know you're doing important work because it is important work. It's impactful work. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. But it's really, really easy to get caught up in, gosh, all I did today was discipline and attendance and lunch duty. And I don't really know that anybody's going home tonight going, man, I'm so glad Dr. Croy, was up there at lunch duty today and watched me eat for 30 minutes. So those are three pretty big ones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. And, it's interesting. Yeah. Several of the pieces, everything you just said really resonated with me. And it did take me back to my first assistant principal role. And that one was discipline and attendance, at the high school level. And it was extremely difficult to wrap up a day and say, hey, here's what I accomplished. When I was in charge of curriculum and instruction as an AP, it was a little easier. It still wasn't every day, but at least, and it was, hey, we really took some big steps in this particular area, or boy, working with this group, we accomplished this today. In discipline and attendance, I was like, I don't know, I saw 122 kids today. Came across my desk, did this. Yeah. 3 lunch duties. Yeah. It's tough. It really is. The realization piece too, of being in other people's classrooms. So where I became an AP, I think this is true of you too. It was not the building I taught in. In fact, it wasn't in the same state as where I taught. And so I wasn't at least going in and watching some of my colleagues teach. It was, for me, everybody in that building was new, but there was that, wow, this is not what it looked like in my classroom, and not that my classroom was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I found some things that I was like, holy cow, I would have never tolerated this in my room. Or, oh my God, I wish I had known this when I was a teacher, because I would have done this. Oh, yeah. This is powerful. I saw so many great teachers. And just, why didn't I know that? But I want to tie the last two things together. There was one point in time, I'll never forget it, my first year in discipline and attendance. And this was before we were doing any, informal walkthroughs or any of that kind of stuff. And I went and I sat in the back of one of our chemistry teachers' classrooms. And he kept looking at me like, why is Darrin here? Seriously, why is Darrin here? This is like, chemistry 2 or an AP Chem class, whatever. These are not kids that the discipline guy is coming to see. So he was just like, why are you here? And then, the bell rang and the kids left and he came back. He's like, Darrin, did you need something? And I said, yes, I needed to regain my sanity. And I just simply wanted to come sit in your classroom because what you do is brilliant with kids. And I was a science guy. That's why I chose a chemistry classroom. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I just needed to be back in this space. Have you had any of those moments at any point in time?
Oh, sure. So I think, there's a couple things there. One of the things when I was still teaching that made me infinitely better is when I actually got to go into some other teachers' classrooms. And not just that, when other teachers started coming into my classrooms, right? So it was before Observe Me was a thing, but it was that same kind of thing. And we had some brand new teachers, and those administrators at that campus that had made such a difference in my life as an educator started asking me if I would open my classroom to other teachers. And just having other teachers like come spend time in your classroom makes you better. Like, cause you want to be better for your peers. You want to be great for your kids, no doubt. But when the other adults walk in the room, you want to be better, especially when they're there to learn, right? They're not there to evaluate you. They're there. So I want to encourage people to get into, before you try to get into an administrative role, get into classrooms, because it's going to help with some of that surprise when you first start out of, oh gosh, classrooms are different. So with that, the other piece is, now that I'm in my fifth year being an assistant principal, I spend as much time as I can in classrooms. That first year, you talk about other realizations. That first year, it's so hard to get into classrooms because every time something lands on your desk, it's new, and you have to spend time learning how to do the thing before you can do the thing. And then you got to go debrief with your principal or somebody else to make sure you did the thing the way that you were supposed to do the thing, whatever it is. So that
Right.
first year, I really struggled to get into classrooms. And it was super refreshing when I did, because we had really good teachers on that campus and we had really great kids. I mean, just an unbelievable place. But it was frustrating because I couldn't get in. And now that I've done this for a few years and I'm not having to relearn all the things all the time, it allows me to be able to block out big chunks of time where I can just go sit in classrooms. And I'm in there for 5 or 10 minutes and I'm trying to get in as many informal walks as I can. And it's not because I'm in there to evaluate. It's not because I'm literally just in there to see what's going on in our school, to see what our kids are doing, to share what our kids are doing and what our teachers are doing. I'm big on social media. I try to take pictures almost every time I'm in a classroom and just give that teacher a shout out or give those kids a shout out on social media, because I want our community to know what's going on. So, that was a long answer, but the short answer of it is yes, I try to get into classrooms as much as I can because it's a happy place. And, I don't really do this, but I know a lot of administrators, like, they'll just go hide in a classroom and knock their emails out and, do some things like that so that they're present with students and present with teachers, and they're not in their office where the bad things happen, because that's what happens in the office, right? So they go to their happy place, right? They go find some great teacher's classroom, they sit down, they start banging out their email because they get to be where they want to be and they can still be productive. I think it's a good way to do things. I don't do it that way, but I have like systems and things that keep me from worrying about email during the day.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit too, but
Sure.
and actually, I guess let's just kind of go at kind of the systems piece. And the first thing is just simply, you're saying, hey, I'm out there, I'm getting into classrooms, and I share constantly, whether here in the podcast or on the blog or just through social media or whatever. When I'm coaching leaders, you have to embrace being the instructional leader, and you can't do that from your office. I mean, it's very hard, basically impossible to lead from your desk. So you're telling me, and I appreciate that you are getting out into classrooms. How are you doing that, or how are you ensuring that it happens on a regular basis?
So first thing I do is at the beginning of the semester, I go and I get into my calendar for the entire semester, and I go day by day by day, and I block out an hour and a half every single day that is already labeled for observations. A lot of people have access to my calendar, whether that's my secretary or that's our 504 clerk or that's our SPED clerk, people that are constantly scheduling these meetings that I have to be in. They have access to my calendar. If I don't block out time on my calendar, they will, because that's their job, right? Their job is to get these things scheduled. And if they see, there have been days where I had, 4 504 meetings back to back to back, because there were just little 45-minute chunks of time that they were like, oh, I can pop one here, I can pop one there. And they're not thinking about all the other things that I have to do during the day. They're just thinking about their job, and I don't blame them. And they're very good at their job, because we got to get, with 4,000 kids in our school, we have to get through quite a few 504s in a year. So they're trying to get them done as quickly as they can so that if something gets, caught up in the process, there'll be time to do it later. So the first thing I do is I protect my time, right? I block out an hour and a half every single day, and I change that where that block of time fits every day, right? So I'll sit down and I'll just go, first period. So we're on a 4-period AB block, right? So we have 4 periods a day. So all I will do is Monday through Friday, I will just go first period, second period on Tuesday, third period on Thursday, fourth period on Friday, and I just change that period of time every single day so that when I make my way into classrooms, I'm not always going in first period, right? Or I'm not always going in last period. It kind of gives me some variation. So that was the first piece of that. The second piece is kind of, people say you have to train people to treat you how you want to be treated. One of the things that people really struggled with this is my first year on this particular campus. And one of the things they struggled with, and I say they being like our office staff and even some of our teachers, is not being in my office. They really struggled with, gosh, I can't ever find you. Like, if you want to find me, send me an email or reach out to my secretary and she'll get you on the calendar. But I'm not just going to sit in my office and be available all day because, and I posted something on LinkedIn maybe about a month ago, and I didn't realize how controversial it was going to be. But all I said was, it's time to close your open door policy. And people lost their minds.
I love that post.
And they were so, and one of them was a teacher in my district, and she's a fantastic teacher. And I say lost their mind. She didn't lose her mind, but you could tell in the way she was typing or responding that she was not happy with the post. And, she put in some things. She's like, I know the kind of leader you are. So I hope that, and it was very much like, I hope that you don't mean you're not going to be available for teachers and things. And that wasn't it. It was that the purpose of the post was, I feel like we only know what people have done before us, right? That's who we learn from. And, for years we hear things about, oh, my door's always open, right? So we feel like, well, my door should always be open. They said their door was always open. That's what we're supposed to do when you move into a leadership role. But the reality of that is, if my door is always open, I'm not going to get any work done. And I did that my first couple of years. The location of my office, all of our APs in my first building were in the same hallway. Well, my office was the very first one when people would come into the hallway to go find whoever their AP was, and my door was open. So they would stop at my office and ask me, one, have I seen their assistant principal? Or two, they would just ask me the question. And so I would spend all my time trying to do that and not getting to the things that I was actually in my office to do. So my whole deal is, my door is open until it's not, right? My door is always open unless it's closed. And if it's closed, it's closed because I'm in there for a very specific reason, so that I can get a thing done and get back out into classrooms. So those are probably the two biggest pieces, right? Getting people to realize you're not always available. There are ways to find you, and there are ways to be to make myself available. And then the other piece is just, getting that calendar taken care of so that everybody will understand, okay, we got to work around his priorities, which is being in classrooms.
I love that so much. I'm glad you brought up actually that post that you had shared. I remembered reading that one. I know I commented on it, but
Sure.
I can't remember what I said, but I know that I really, really appreciated that perspective because you're right. The whole open door policy thing. Yes, we've heard that forever. And I think in many ways it's kind of like, the metaphorical door is open, but no, you can't literally just have your door open all the time. You're going to have times when, yeah, you're right. I mean, you got to get stuff done, but then also, you may have, those moments with students in your office or with an employee, whether that's an employee in crisis or some employee discipline or an evaluation. I mean, the simple, hey, my door is always open, that just doesn't fly. And I know that I remember reading some of the posts that people had on there, and I think it was just a gut reaction to you saying it's time to end the open door policy, rather than just reading the entire thing and understanding, hey, availability is critical. And that's what you were getting at. At least that's how I took it. My availability is huge. And in order for me to really be available, I got to be able to close my door and knock some stuff out so that I can go be available.
Yep. Yeah. And being available doesn't have to be in the office, right? You said that, right? To go be available where where the customers are, so to speak, right? They're in classrooms. That's where teachers are. That's where kids are. And, I take a lot of pride in, I feel like my teachers have seen me more, and this isn't a dig on other people, but I feel like they've seen me more than they've ever seen an administrator in their hallways. And it's not a dig on the previous administrators. They didn't have the systems set up for them, right? They didn't have it. We've got extra people this year that they didn't have, and they didn't have a leader like I have. My principal, he models this beautifully. He does a fantastic job of utilizing his secretary as a gatekeeper and being out and setting a precedence that he's going to be out in classrooms all the time. And when he models that for us, it makes it really, really easy for the rest of us to have that same set of priorities. It's been fantastic. And now when I walk into my office, so we have houses, we have a lower house and an upper house. And so in the lower house, there are 4 assistant principals and 4 counselors, and all 8 of us are kind of, it's like a bullpen, so to speak, right? We each have an office, but there's one big open space with a receptionist in there or a secretary in there. And now every time I walk into the lower house, it's like Norm from Cheers, right? Like everybody, they make a big deal out of it, right? Like, oh, look who's here today, so it took a while, but now they understand. And now that everybody understands, it's not a surprise that, oh, I didn't see you at all today, because I don't live in here. Bad things happen in the office. So we're going to go be where all the good stuff is as much as possible.
I think that's fantastic. And I want to take that and kind of transition a little bit into the work that you're doing with New School Leader and just that passion you have for supporting assistant principals. You've talked about it being kind of like the forgotten role and that type of thing. So I'm interested in that. And where I want to jump off is what you were just talking about. And that's utilizing your secretary as a gatekeeper. This is something I did not learn until probably my second year as a principal. But it was a game changer once I knew, and was able to build a system with her where, if teachers wanted to see me and I'm going down the hallway, we developed a quick system. Email Marilyn, she'll get you on the calendar. I'll come to you, that kind of thing. How did that come about with you? And what's maybe 1 or 2 things, just, real quick, that you share with leaders to get past but I want to be in control of my calendar, or I want to be in control of my email, or whatever?
So I didn't do it at first either. I was an AP for 4 years in another building. This is my 5th year and my first year in this building. And again, part of that is my principal. He models this beautifully, but it was also just realizing over the last couple of years that I can't be in control of everything if I want to be able to. There's just not enough time in the day, right? And as I've grown, I've started to realize that there are things that only I can do as a certified administrator. Ashley, my secretary, she can't go observe teachers. She can't go evaluate teachers and work with them on things like that. Only I can do that. But she can talk to students about attendance. She can communicate with parents about about attendance things, about small discipline things like tardies and, things like. There are things that she can do, and she is talented. She is intelligent. She has a college degree. It's not like this is somebody who can't do anything else. She could do whatever else she wants to do. She chose to work in schools because she wants to have an impact. And I feel like what we do too often is we don't allow our office staff to do meaningful work. We allow them to do things like answer the phone and send emails, but we don't allow them to do things that they can actually do. So realizing that there were things that she could do that I could also do, but if I did those, it wouldn't allow me to do the thing that only I can do. That was a huge step for me because I felt like I had to be the gatekeeper of all the things. And my principal kind of shared that. He was like, look, she's awesome. My secretary is awesome. His secretary is awesome. Let them do things and take those things off your plate. So it was really sitting down and kind of identifying, okay, what are the things that our office staff can do that'll take as much off of our plates as possible so that we can go be instructional leaders, because that was the biggest piece. So the first thing is in all of that, realize that they want meaningful work. They're not there just to sit at a desk all day. They want to do important things. They want to be helpful. They want to feel like they're making an impact. So find meaningful work for them to do, not just answering the phone. The second thing is you have to get comfortable asking them to do things. That was probably the hardest thing for me, right? Is like, I realized that she was important and she could do meaningful work, but it's just, when you're a teacher, you don't have somebody that you can ask to do things for you, right? You just get used to the grind and you get used to doing all the things by yourself. And now all of a sudden I have this person, first 4 years being an AP, I didn't know how to utilize them at all, right? They were kind of telling me what they were doing because like they're brilliant and they're incredible and they were doing a lot of great things, but it was them. And I don't say this badly. They were dictating to me, hey, here are the things that we do in this role, instead of us working together to come up with what's the best use of your time and what's the best use of my time. And now that we've done that, then it was really me just getting comfortable going, okay, she can do this, right? Like I'm interviewing teachers right now, right? So I'm sifting through resumes, and normally I would send out calendar invites to candidates and go, hey, do you have time sometime? I don't need to do that. I just, here are the 3 people I want to interview next week. Hey, Ashley, can you email these people and set up times? You have my calendar. Please do that, because that saves me a ton of time. There's no back and forth. She does it. Then I can go be in classroom. So I look through I look through the resumes. I send them to her. She sets it up. And we've got to find like that balance of who's doing work that allows us to be the most effective campus we can possibly be. That's really, really important.
That is just huge right there. I love how you talk about ensuring that they can do meaningful work and to really give them those opportunities. I know that was something I struggled with too. And what I discovered, in your case, it's Ashley, in my case, it was Marilyn, that the more we sat and talked, and we put 10 minutes on the calendar every single day together, just so we could just touch base real fast, make sure, we're clear on what I had to get done, what she was focused on. But it started to become almost a, hey, Darrin, I can do that for you, or let me do that for you. I've got this. Even to the point where, and I don't know if I've talked with you about this, but I know I've talked about it on the show, my balcony time, when it was like my time to, okay, I got to go check in on myself. These things that I know are important. There were times she put it on the calendar. Hey, I put balcony time on your calendar today because you need to go check in with yourself. You're getting lost in the weeds. I need you to be focused. And what you truly develop is really a partnership and kind of this, symbiotic relationship that you're both going to be more successful as a result of working together.
It's funny. You were talking about, how she could say, hey, Darrin, I could do this for you. This is kind of what finally did it for me. Again, looking through my calendar and seeing these meetings that I had on there and knowing, all right, I got a 504 meeting. I need to get this student. After about the 4th or 5th time of me going into Ashley's office and going, hey, can you call this kid down? She's like, they're sitting right there. Like, I've already done it. Right. It's like, she was just showing
she was just
me,
ahead of you. Yeah.
She's staying on top of my calendar. She's like, I've already done it. They're on their way. I've already sent the pass. And after about 4 or 5 times, then it became a joke of I'd walk and go like, hey, I know you already done this. I just want to make sure because I'm anal. And she's like, yeah, I've already done it. So, and then finally I just quit. I finally just was like, all right, she's got it. Yeah. I'm just going to trust it. And as long as she's in the office, life is good. Cause I know those things are taken care of. And it just takes a while because you're so self-reliant as a teacher. Right. And, not taking anything away from working your team, but just on the day-to-day grind of your job, you find ways to get things done and you rely on yourself. And that's a shift, but you have to use that if you're going to have time to do your own meaningful work in this role. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
Well, it comes down to one word, and you said it right there in that piece, and that's trust. When you develop that trust, man, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So let's talk a little bit about aspiring administrators right now. So as we're recording this, probably not when it's out there live, but as we're recording this, the earlier part of March. This is the season. You just talked about your interviewing teachers. It's not just teachers. There's administrators who are being interviewed, whether that's assistant principal all the way up through superintendents right now. People are, doing that annual dance of either taking their first leap or taking the leap to the next role. So as you're working with the aspiring administrators, let's really focus on them right now, the people wanting to leap out of the classroom and into an AP role. What are some things right now that you are sharing with them or telling them or advising them around when it comes to looking for that job you want to jump forward to?
Yeah. So there's a lot, right? And it's very seasonal. This is, like you said, this is hiring season. And once you get into this season, here's what I see people doing, right? They see a job get posted and all of a sudden they're like, ooh, I think I'm going to try to go get that AP job. But they haven't put the work in up to that point. Right. So a lot of what we talk about is what we should be doing the other 8 months of the year to get ready for hiring season. Right. In this time, a lot of the advice that, we're giving right now is really centered around interview prep and, who are you talking to and things like that to kind of position yourself for that opportunity. But the rest of the year, it's really being tactical about what are the things that I can be doing over the summer? What can I be doing in the fall to set myself up for success when January, February, March rolls around? So, it really just depends on the season. Right now, again, we're talking a lot about the coaching work that we're doing right now. It's really interview prep and, getting people prepared, because it's another one of those things when you walk into the interview the first time for an assistant principal job, you have no idea what you're looking at. Unless you've gone through it, or unless you've had somebody walk you through the process of getting you ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's something too. I mean, let's just add this one to it. We don't do it a lot. You just don't. Oh, yeah. I talk with leaders all the time who are maybe in not necessarily the aspiring space, but in that taking the next step. I'm a principal and I'm ready to look at a district level position, superintendent, AP, assistant superintendent, whatever. And almost always, Lute, this is what I hear him say. Darrin, I haven't interviewed in 5 years. I haven't interviewed in 9 years or something like that. And it's you really do want to practice that process. Mm-hmm. And I know there are a lot of resources out there where you can get kind of some canned questions, but let's do this. Let's talk about the person who is preparing to interview in their own space, whether it's their own building or their own district. So you have insight. How do you prepare if you are getting ready to interview for another position in your district? How do you prepare differently in-house versus you're going to a different state?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think it should be easier, right? Because the initiatives, the work that your district is doing, the goals. So you need to be thinking about the questions are likely going to be the same for you as they are for Mr. Outside Hire or Mrs. Outside Hire, right? So your advantage is the work your district is doing or the work your campus is doing. So when you're preparing, you need to be thinking about what are the types of questions I'm going to get. And then when I respond, I'm going to make sure that my answers tie in ways that I'm supporting those initiatives or those goals or that work, or ways that I'm helping solve problems to make that work better. Because I think one of the things that I say to people a lot is everybody has the quote unquote right answer when they interview for an assistant principal job, because they've talked to people, they have an idea, they're at least in the ballpark, right? I remember I sat down one day or one semester, we were interviewing to add an assistant principal to our staff. We interviewed 9 people for the job. All 9 of them qualified, solid answers, but it's who can tell a story that shows that they actually have a depth of knowledge about what they're talking about and not just this high level view of quote unquote leadership. Right. And I give you a quick short story. I remember my first time of interviewing to try to get into one of the pools in a large district in this area. And I was in the second round of an interview, and it was a panel of directors and executive directors, and it was going really, really well. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's giving me, some great nonverbal feedback. And one of the questions I got was, what are you going to do to, something along the lines of how are you going to support a struggling teacher? And I was giving them whatever. I'm a teacher coach at this point in my life. I've never helped a struggling teacher, right? But I'm giving them what I think I'm going to do, right? What I think that looks like. And at one point, right, one of the buzzwords was like leveraging resources. And I said, and I'm going to leverage resources, blah, 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 blah. And there was a guy who sat in the back, and I had walked into his trap because he knew that I didn't know what I was talking about, right? So he sits up and he leans forward. He's like, tell me exactly what resources you're going to leverage, Mr. Croy. And I was just like, oh, he got me. Right. So I got out of it. Right. And I said some things, but it was in that moment that I realized, oh, I need specifics, because everybody's coming in here giving because it is right. You do want to leverage resources, but can I be specific in how I'm going to do that? Right. So all of my answers in preparing for moving up in my own district need to be tied back to the work that I'm doing, to the work that I'm doing that supports those initiatives and those goals, and letting them understand that I really understand what the work should look like in this district versus maybe some other district.
So that's perfect. I'm glad that you went there. Honestly, about 60% through your answer, I knew exactly where you were going to end up, and I'm just sitting over here kind of biting my lip, not to interrupt and say, oh yeah, what leverage or what resources are those? I mean, but I'm glad that you pointed that out, and here's why. I hear this so frequently from people. I mean, even go back to my own time in, even back to being an assistant principal, and like there were a couple of different times as an AP where we were hiring other APs. And of course there were internal candidates, and, often it was, well, what have I done wrong? I've earned my place here at the table, or whatever the case may be. But what you just said is exactly what it is. So as the internal candidate, it may feel like, hey, I have an advantage. I know all these things that you just said. Well, you better damn well know them extremely well. That answer that you gave for the Mr. Outside or Mrs. Outside is probably acceptable. For you on the inside, you just fried your own bacon right there, because you know what? If I'm going to say, oh, this is what I'm going to do, you damn well better know what it is, right?
And I think, with that too, the other advantage that you have as the inside hire is you have a year or years to show them that you know your stuff, right? Like,
yes,
there are so many people that jump into an interview. I get people all the time. They come into my office and go, hey, I want to be an assistant principal. And it's February. I'm like, well, cool. Why didn't you tell me in August? Like,
you
honestly,
just woke up to that today, huh?
I saw they posted this job. Do you think I'd be a good fit for it? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen you lead anything. So that, to me, the interview is important. The interview is important. We created a course to help people prepare for the interview. I believe the interview is important, but especially for internal hires, you've got to be showing that you're ready to get into the work. Like when a job gets posted and you go in and talk to your assistant principal or to your principal and go, hey, I really think I'd be a good fit for this. You want them to go, yeah, you will. You absolutely need to apply for that job.
Right.
But if you've not solved a problem on your campus, if you've not let them know in advance that this is something that you're interested in so that they could give you opportunities to lead, if you're not showing up in your off time to help with things around the office so that you can get to know the work, if you're not engaging in a community of other leaders that are trying to grow and network, you've wasted the opportunity. Now it's all on the interview, if you even get an interview, right? So don't waste that opportunity to show that you're ready for the job.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. We as leaders are paying attention. And I think sometimes people forget that, they don't realize that, the behaviors and actions that you are taking, that's a big deal, and people are paying attention. We had, I'll just tell you the story real quick, no follow-up question to it, but we had a person in the district where I was an AP and ultimately a principal who showed up to a professional development day and was making it very clear he did not want to be engaged, like got his newspaper out, and, then he wouldn't get interview position or opportunities for assistant principal. And it's like, well, what did you expect? As APs and principals in that district, we were tasked with leading professional development. And if your behavior as a teacher is, I don't need to be a part of this, why would we put you on our leadership team? What part of that do you think is a good idea? I mean, it was funny and it was cute, but as far as your future and for that individual, he had to go somewhere else to be an administrator because he had absolutely ended any possibility that anybody would put him on a leadership team with that type of behavior. So it is very important for people to be cognizant of that. So let's jump to this. Just really quick, tell me about when you're in the assistant principal role. What's maybe something that you're sharing with APs or that you're doing yourself if you're thinking, eventually, I want to take that next step. I want to be a principal. I want to go to the district level. What are some things you can do within your AP role, given the confines of your responsibilities, that allow you to grow and prepare yourself for something else?
So first thing is you need to have a conversation with your principal right up front and let them know that, hey, grateful for this opportunity. I want to be a principal. So anything that you can give me, any opportunity you can give me, I want it, right? As your work, especially it's hard your first year, right? Because everything's new, and likely your first year you're going to be consumed with discipline and attendance and those types of things that all first year APs have to learn how to do. But as you're going along, start looking at the work that the other APs on your staff are doing. Start looking at what other APs in your network are doing. And when you see something or you see a responsibility that one of them has that you're unfamiliar with, that's when you go to your principal and go, hey, next year, can I help with fill in the blank, whatever that is, right? Your first year, you're not going to get work with master schedule, likely. You're not going to get work with, being on the guiding leadership potentially, team potentially, right? Because you're just trying to figure out the day to day. But the more you grow and the more you ask for opportunities, if you're a good steward with the opportunities that you're given and you're asking for opportunities, they're going to come. But if you're looking past your current opportunities to try to just get more in the future because those are the fun ones or those are the more meaningful, quote unquote, ones, they might not give you more because you're not being a good steward of what you have in front of you right now.
I love that. Love that. Let's go ahead and jump to the last question I ask everybody here on the podcast. So leaning into leadership, Lute, how are you leaning into leadership right now?
Yeah. So there are a couple things that I'm doing right now. One is we're growing the new school leader. We're really trying to multiply our leadership and help aspiring administrators get in their first role and help new assistant principals be successful. Instead of spending that whole first year trying to figure out what they're doing. So that's been a huge part of my focus right now, kind of in my free time. In my current role as an assistant principal, I've been trying to, like what we were just talking about, I've been trying to take on opportunities that I've never had before, right? So my principal has given me the lead on a master schedule this year. He's given me the lead on our goal of becoming a model PLC campus. He's given me, a lot of those things, which have been fantastic. But the next thing that I'm doing right now in getting out of my comfort zone is, knowing that I want to move up, knowing that I want to be a principal and more someday. I'm taking on summer school principal this year for the first time. So that'll be, it sounds like the worst job in America, right? Because
it's not that bad. I loved it.
But I think it's going to be great. And it's going to give me an opportunity to hire staff. It's going to give me an opportunity to lead some people. So looking forward to that. We're going to start doing that as soon as we get back from spring break. We start that work. So that'll be good.
Yeah, right on, man. So just one final thing then. So anybody who is interested in the new school leader, connecting with you on social media, that type of stuff, what do they do to reach out and get connected with Dr. Lute Croy?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few places you can find me. One, you can find me on Twitter at Lute Croy, LuteCroy. That's a great place to connect. You can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is becoming a place where more and more educators are starting to interact. Where it's where you and I met. It's where I've met a bunch of people that have been on your show. That's a great place for educators that I think is very underutilized. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find us at thenewschoolleader.com. It's where we kind of post all of our content. All of those things are available there. And, if you're an email kind of person, Lute at thenewschoolleader.com. And if you're an aspiring administrator and you're trying to get ready for interviews, we did put together the assistant principal interview boot camp, and that is live. If you go to courses.thenewschoolleader.com, you can find it there. And if you use the coupon AWESOME, you can get 10% off the course. So
Sweet.
We'll know that you came from Road to Awesome to get there. Yeah.
Right on. So I will link all of that stuff in the show notes.
Sure.
So folks, if you're driving right now and you're like, where am I going to get that? It's in the show notes. We'll make sure you have hyperlinks to get you to all that stuff. Get in there and check out all the really cool stuff in the New School Leader. Dr. Lute Croy, thank you so much for being here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Darrin. I had a blast.
Once again, thank you to Dr. Lute Croy for joining me here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So many powerful things that he talked about there. I think one of the things that maybe is my favorite from that entire conversation is the two of us going back and forth about really empowering your secretary. New, aspiring, rising leaders. That's one of the most important things you can do. Really make sure that that secretary, administrative assistant, whatever the title might be, is really empowered to make a difference and that they know that they have your trust to go ahead and take care of some of those things for you. It's going to make you a much more efficient leader. And now it's time for a pep talk. Dr. Croy talked about, towards the end of his interview, the work that he does with New School Leader and how he's really passionate about coaching up those aspiring leaders to land those positions. Folks, everybody can benefit from a coach. And I really believe that all of us can benefit from having a coach. I have a coach. As a new entrepreneur, I have to have a coach. I need somebody who can help hold me accountable, somebody who can help guide me in the right direction. Having a coach doesn't mean you're failing. Having a coach means you're going to do everything you can to be the best that you can possibly be in your role. Coaching matters, folks. Those are my thoughts for this week on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a Road to Awesome day. Thank you for listening to the Leaning Into Leadership podcast, brought to you by Road to Awesome. Don't forget, click subscribe, give a review, and share this with somebody who might also enjoy leaning into leadership.